Hello today, this is Michael from Dallas Cowboys Sports 1977. I come to you today and we're speaking about the Dallas Cowboys and how America's team had become about. Back in 1959, the great Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi were player coaches for the New York Giants. And Vince had created the zone blocking and Tom had created the 4-3 defense for the New York Giants, and they had built them into a great winner. And then the NFL wanted to expand at that time and bring a southern team to the southern part of the United States. And they had picked a name. It was called the Dallas Cowboys. And so Dallas had hired Tom Landry as their coach. In the NFL at that time, Pete Rozelle was the commissioner of the league. And they didn't have a draft. And because they didn't have a draft, every team that gave them their weakest players off their team to build that team. They didn't have a draft, and they went 1-11 that first year. They went 0-11 that first year. The next year, was the second year, was 1961. They went 1-11. And that one win was against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so it was a hard time at that time, but it was a great time. It was exciting. They was in a lot of games and everything and stuff, and the players were exciting, and the fans was upbeat about it. And so we will fast forward to 1960, about 65, 66 during that year. They had recruited a player out of FAMU. His name was Bullet Bob Hayes, and the quarterback was Don Meredith. And he was one of the because of the way defenses are made today, with the zone defenses, with the cover 2, the Tampa 2, 4-3, different attack disguises, and to cover great wide receivers. It was because of the great Bullet Bob Hayes. Him and Don Meredith had connected on, I believe it was a 97-yard touchdown pass. I don't know what game it was. And because of his greatness and speed, they had to change when teams play defense. And Dallas always would be in games and everything, but the stigma was put upon them that they were next year's champion, that they could never win a big game. They had this great defensive tackle. His name was his name was Bob Lidley out of Texas Christian. And he was number 74. Played on the original Doomsday defense with Jethro Pugh, and if you remember the famous game, the famous Ice Bowl game against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field, and Bart Starr, when he stepped over the goal line on his quarterback sneak between the right guard and right tackle to win the game. Well, in that game, the quarterback Bart Starr went and told Vince Lombardi that he feel that we can wedge Pugh, we can beat him at the line of scrimmage, and that's what happened. So the stigma against the Cowboys that they could never win a big game, they could never be winners. And when they got to the Super Bowl against I believe it was Super Bowl 6 against the Baltimore Colts, they should have won that game. And they had a starting quarterback. His name was Craig Martin. And a great running back they had was Dwayne Thomas. And Dwayne Thomas wore the number 33, a great running back. And I believe he fumbled at that time. And a few plays later, Baltimore kicked the field goal, won the game. The game was 16-13. And that's the game when Bob Lidley got frustrated and upset. And because that stigma was put upon our great franchise that they can never win anything, but we know better than that. They had been a great franchise, and that's the exciting part about being a Dallas Cowboy fan. It's always we always have to go above to be great. And this great coach that we had, his name was Tom Landry. He was a Christian, Deacon of the church, and most of all, he would, in the off season, he would be on Billy Graham crusades, speaking about Christ, about people getting saved, and about how God had saved him and how the Lord changed his life around. My channel is going to be in that same aspect. Whenever I come to you to talk about our great team, the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to talk about Christ. I'm going to read the scriptures. I'm going to pray. I'm going to talk about what needs to be done to fix this team, how this team can be great. And we're going back to that same subject. And so they end up losing the game. And after the game, the players was hurt. They were crying in the locker room, and they was upset. And that's when Bob Lilly made a promise, and he told other players, we're never going to lose no more. The next year, they ended up playing in Tulane Stadium against the Miami Dolphins, the up and starting team, the Miami Dolphins. Their starting quarterback was Bob Greasy, and a great fullback, Larry Zonka, Jim Kitt, Mercury Morris was their wide receivers and running back. Dallas had the great tight end, Mike Ditka was our tight end, and we had some multiple people on the team at that time. Bullet Bob Hayes was still on the team. And Dallas won the game 24-3 down in Tulane Stadium before the New Orleans Superdome was built at that time. And they carried Tom Landry off the field that day in exuberant excitement, which it was the second time for the Dallas Cowboys. They got the monkey up the back, and they ended up being a great champion. And that's when they started winning. They had 20 winning seasons, won their conference 18 times. And at that time, the NFC East, at that time, it was one of the most powerful conferences at that time. And during those years of the 70s, every team, even the average teams in that era had great defenses. And I'm gonna name them for you. There was the Pittsburgh Steelers, great defense, great team, had superstars at every position. A great quarterback, Terry Bradshaw, great fullback, Franco Harris, and great defense with Mean Joe Green, L.C. Greenwood, Donnie Shell, great wide receivers, John Stallworth, and Jack Lambert, Jack Ham were playing for them. And when Dallas lost the Super Bowl 10, and down in Miami, in the Miami Orange Bowl, Dallas should have won that game, but they only got to that game because of the game before that was the famous Hail Mary game. In the famous Hail Mary game, the Dallas Cowboys was playing up in Minnesota, out in the snow, in frigid, terrible temperatures against the Minnesota Vikings, and their nickname was the Purple People Eaters. They had a great defense. They had a defensive tackle named Alan Page and another tackle named Marshall. I can't think his right name right now, but they both were great. Their defense was just, I believe that's one of the greatest Minnesota teams that did not get to a Super Bowl. And Dallas should have lost the game. And in that game, on one of the plays, it was a 4th and I believe 18. And in the play before that, Roger was sacked on the play, and then he threw the pass to Preston Pearson, and Preston Pearson dropped the pass. Then the next play was the famous Hail Mary pass where he threw to Drew Pearson for a 50-yard touchdown pass in the famous Hail Mary game. On that play, Roger said he just dropped back and said, because he been a Christian and he's Catholic, and he said Hail Mary, and when Drew caught the ball, he didn't even know he had the ball, and the ball was caught between the right side of his hip, and some of the players on Minnesota thought he pushed off, but back then, to be a great wide receiver, you had to come across the middle, you had to take licks, take hits. Defenses now, the way they play defense now is like playing flag tackle football. And I'm going to comment on that. And they ended up winning the game. Dallas went to the Super Bowl as a wild card team. Should have never got there, but they did. They was on a rebuilding year. They ended up losing the game 21-17. And one of the significant plays in that game is where late in the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, Dallas was leading the game. They should have won the game. And Benny Barnes got caught on a pass interference call. He was covering Lynn Swann, the great wide receiver from USC. And on that play, the referees called a pass interference when it went with significant thing of this story. Lynn Swann was the one that pushed off, and he got his legs tangled up with Benny Barnes, but the referee called pass interference against the Dallas Cowboys. And it was like the referees, which I've been one before for 9 years as a high school official. I'm not trying to be biased because I like the Dallas Cowboys and it's my team. But in that story, I believe the officials was being very biased against the Dallas Cowboys because they didn't want them there. They ended up losing the game. And 2 years later, they made it back again. Super Bowl 12, down in New Orleans Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. The team they were playing against was the up-and-coming, the famous Orange Crush defense, the Denver Broncos. They had a great quarterback on their team that used to play for the Dallas Cowboys that ended up losing the Super Bowl against Baltimore. Craig Martin was their starting quarterback. And before Dallas they came in the game, they that week when it was a few weeks before the Super Bowl, the Cowboys that came up with a scheme that they felt that they know they could beat this team because they'd already played them in the regular season. And during the regular season, this team, Dallas, had the #1 ranked offense and the #1 ranked defense. They was the first to win a Super Bowl with the #1 ranked offense and defense. In the regular season, Dallas played Denver at Denver and lost it. They won the game. They won that game, but their only 2 losses during the regular season. They lost to St. Louis Cardinals at St. Louis, and they lost to Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. And they should have won both of those games. And that was the only 2 losses. They went 12-2 in the regular season, and won 3 playoff games. They beat Chicago Bears, beat the Minnesota Vikings, and then won the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos. And in this game, Dallas had the very best defense that year. The great Harvey Martin was the defensive MVP of that season. Before they started counting sacks at that time, he had more sacks than the ones that the guys that they give them sacks now to this day. They don't get credit for it. And him and Randy White was first ever co-MVPs of a Super Bowl played at that time. And it was during that time, football was like it was like professional, but it was like high school atmosphere. And what I'm saying that is because on any given day you can be beaten by anybody. And the teams back then were so powerful. And this young generation think that Tom Brady is the best quarterback to ever live, which in my understanding, and that's football and playing the game, coaching the game, and officiating the game, that's not true. If he'd have played in the era of the 70s, he wouldn't have made it because they changed the rules, changed the rules to protect the quarterback, to protect the wide receiver coming across the middle between the hash marks. And then they labeled him as the greatest. He's a pocket passer that don't move that much, and has a legendary great coach, but a coach that sometimes has cheated to get leverage against other teams, which is wrong. And in this era, it was nobody. They didn't need to. During that era, teams that need to cheat to beat. They compete against the referees. They competed against the other teams. They didn't need that. The Dallas Cowboys with a great Doomsday 2 defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers was the same way. They didn't need no officials to help them to beat teams. They were that powerful. And the other teams of that era, it was the Fearsome Foursome with Deacon Jones, Marilyn Olsen, Rosie Greer. They were unbelievable. It was the Washington Redskins, the over the hill game, the Miami Dolphins, the no-name defense. And at that time, in this game, Dallas forced 8 turnovers in the game. And the game was almost kind of like, not I wouldn't necessarily play sloppy. Both teams are so powerful coming into this game, and it verifies why I'm saying what I'm saying about the way rules are done today, where the game is played today, and how things are done. Because if Tom Brady played in that era, he wouldn't have lasted. Because these were men amongst both. These was men. This not this flag type of football they got today, when you barely touch a quarterback or come near a quarterback, and they're gonna call a roughing the passer, or either call these fake illegal holding penalties against the offensive line, or on defense with the defensive ends rushing the passer, and they doing swim moves or underneath moves, and usually going against these slow big tackles and stuff. And this young generation think that the people weren't powerful or fast enough. That's untrue, and it's not, and it's nowhere near truth. And because the reason why I'm saying this is because my Dallas Cowboys that I love and been following since I was about 5 going on 6 years old, this team was exciting, great. They was the most loved and the most hated team of that era. And that's what motivates me to talk about to you how great Dallas has become. The America's team, yes, they have lived up that stigma. They've lived up to it. And every time the amazing thing about this story, every time they have won a Super Bowl during that season, they had some kind of dilemma going on with the team at that time. When they won the Super Bowl in '71 against the Miami Dolphins, Dwayne Thomas, he was going through a contract dispute with the team, and he didn't want to talk to the media. He would keep to himself. He said he'd come to work and do his job and everything, which he was great at doing that and everything. But he was like a standoffish type player. In 1977, when they won the Super Bowl, they was going through some challenges where the year before that, in 1976, they missed it. They missed the Super Bowl and missed the playoffs. And that year, the Pittsburgh Panthers won the national championship down in New Orleans Superdome, and I believe it was against the Georgia Bulldogs. And the great running back Tony Dorsett, he was the Heisman Trophy that year, MVP of the game, and he was remarkable, great running back. And at that time, teams were not, if there was a great team and they had great players and they were great players and they made the playoffs and they did better than most teams, very seldom they would get the best player of the coming out that year. And at that time, it was between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And this great running back, Ricky Bell, was coming out of USC, and Tony Dorsett was coming out of Pittsburgh. And when he came out of Pittsburgh, Dallas ended up somehow or another making a trade with the Seattle Seahawks at that time, when Seattle Seahawks used to be in the AFC conference before they moved to the NFC. And Dallas ended with how blessed, how the Lord allowed that great thing to happen to be the building block, to be the standard of what Dallas is today. And our great legendary coach, Tom Landry, I'm giving credit where it's due. He was a great man. First of all, he was a great man of God, a great man of building great men to be great players. He was a hard-nosed type of person. Plus, he had been in wars, been in the military, been in the end of World War II and the Korean War, and served in the military and being a Christian. He utilized that greatness to teach his players how to be great. And in this Super Bowl, even though despite all the errors or mistakes of fumbling, turnovers, holding, clipping, and all that, moved that out of the way. It was an exciting, great Super Bowl, and our Dallas Cowboys came out on top, 27-10 against the Denver Broncos, and they forced 8 turnovers, and I believe they held the Denver Broncos to a total of 137 yards of total offense and 38 yards passing. They sacked Craig Martin, and they had another starting quarterback, I can't think his name right now, that took over late in the third quarter. He was an option type quarterback in college, and they used him to try to neutralize the great Doomsday 2 defense, because at that time, Dallas was drawing up plays and they was making up all kind of blitzes and everything, and they was forcing turnovers, and at first, when the game first began, Dallas received the ball first, and they fumbled on the first kickoff, and then Tony Dorsett fumbled a couple of times. Roger was sacked about 5-6 times, but the game was structurally had errors, but greatly played. When Tony Dorsett scored that first touchdown in the first late in the first quarter to make it 7-0, they was lined up in the wishbone like full house backfield formation, which my high school utilizes sometimes. And back in the day when I was in high school, and it was a great offense. Oklahoma Sooners ran that offense, and at that time, I was in high school in 10th grade at that time. It was when I'm watching the game, it was kind of like nerve-wracking. It was almost like exciting happiness and nerve-wracking all at once. But when I knew Dallas had took the lead, I knew they was gonna win the Super Bowl, because they were a great, powerful team. And the team they were playing against, the Orange Crush, was no slouch. They had this great defensive tackle from the Miami Hurricanes, and he ended up being one of the coaches. He used to coach for Florida A&M University, and he was unbelievable. They had a linebacker named Tom Jackson. That used to be an ESPN analyst. He was amazing. I believe he wore number 53, if I'm not mistaken. He was awesome, and he was all over the field and everything. And Denver had a player, Lyle Alzado, number 74. He played for the Denver Broncos, played for the Oakland Raiders, played for the Cleveland Browns. Great defensive tackle. He was powerful, unbelievable. He was a man amongst boys. And back then, the reason why teams it was about an average about 10 teams in the NFL at that time was so powerful. You can basically predict who's gonna get to the Super Bowl, who's gonna win, who's gonna make it, because the NFL didn't want this. They didn't want the league being dominated by about 5 or 10 teams. So they started bringing this draft type stuff where you can't have more than too many superstars on one team, and they don't want you to keep piling up all the superstars on one team and another team having hardly no good players. And that's what they did. They done away with that. That was about 1982. And after Dallas won the Super Bowl in '77, they went again in 1978. It was a 7-8 season. Them and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Dallas Cowboys was the returning champion, and Pittsburgh was a former champion. And it was like the first ever, one of the greatest Super Bowls to ever live. Dallas lost 31-35. It was played back down in Miami, down in the Miami Hurricane Stadium, where the Miami Dolphins play at. They done tore the stadium down. And in that game, Dallas lost 31-35. But Dallas, late in the third quarter, the Cowboys was in a two tight end formation with a slot receiver and one outside receiver with one back in the backfield. And the Cowboys called a slant route across the middle to Jackie Smith. And Roger, he read the play correctly. And Pittsburgh was in the wrong defense, and they left the middle so wide open it wouldn't play within 20 yards of him. And this great tight end, he was from the St. Louis Cardinals. They had just been picked up off the waivers a year before from St. Louis. The ball hit him square in the chest, and he caught it like this. And the ball, when he caught it, he didn't hold it long enough, and it rolled out and fell on the ground. The way the rules are today, that would have counted. And Dallas ended up settling for a field goal. And the very next drive, Pittsburgh scored, took the lead, and they ended up, and then Dallas came back and scored a couple more times, and the game ended up 35-31. And Dallas should have won that game, just like in Super Bowl 10 when they was a wild card and they lost to Pittsburgh. Then they should have won that one. And so, with all these great appearances in Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls, one of the Dallas Cowboys executives decided, why don't we call them America's team, because they were so exciting. They was exciting, special, wonderful, and the fans was loving them, even though it was getting hate all over the world and everything. And Dallas alone, in this great city, it was a TV show called Dallas, one of my favorite shows. I used to watch the show all the time. And when the show comes on, guess what it's showing? It's showing the Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Texas Stadium, and it shows the Dallas Cowboys, and you can see the camera shows inside of the Texas Stadium. And the meaning of that, the reason why the stadium is open, because our Heavenly Father can look down on his team, which is the Dallas Cowboys, which is my team, your team. And me watching my favorite soap opera, which is Dallas, named out the city Dallas, starring Larry Hagman and the other few actors. Linda, I can't think of the name right now. But it was exciting. It was special, but by them connected to the Dallas Cowboys and everything around the Dallas Cowboys, it just built them up, and them being America's team. And then our rivals at that time, we have so many rivals. And those rivals were the Washington Redskins, which they just recently been forced to change their name. They haven't gotten one yet. Our other rivals was the New York Giants from New York City, the Philadelphia Eagles, the St. Louis Cardinals. At time, before they moved to Arizona, they was called the St. Louis Cardinals. The Pittsburgh Steelers used to be in our conference back in the 60s before they moved to the LC. The Cleveland Browns was a rival before they moved to the LC. The Baltimore Colts was our rival before they moved to the LC. But when they built and they realigned the NFC East and made it where it is then, is now, where it was back then, it was so powerful. On that given day, anybody can, on any given day, that league was so powerful, they could beat anybody. And in that league, everybody in that league has won a Super Bowl and has been a champion, even before they counted Super Bowls. I don't like Philadelphia, but Philadelphia was a world champion. I believe it was 1961, either 60 or 61. They won a world championship. 1946, 1948, they won a championship. They had three championships before they won a Super Bowl about 3 or 4 years ago. The New York Giants has won 4 Super Bowls. The Washington Redskins has won 3 Super Bowls. The Dallas Cowboys has won 5 and played in the 8. So because now they consider the league and the fans and the media has said this league, the NFC East, is a weak league. It's not. It's just that times have changed, rules have changed, people have changed, coaches have changed. And from 1978 to the 90s, till we got to the 90s, we ended up not being much. The teams, the 1980 season, after when Roger retired at the end of the 1979 season, after beating Washington, the Redskins beating them, and that was his. I believe that was his last. That was not his last game. I think his last game he played against the Los Angeles Rams, and then he retired. And our quarterback at the time was Danny White. He got us to 3 straight NFC Conference Championship games, but could never get us to the Super Bowl. He was, I would say, he was a great quarterback. He was between good and great. In that he wasn't. I'm not trying to talk bad about him, but I believe he was good, almost great. He had a great arm, could read the defense. He wasn't mobile enough, but he was amazing. He ended up being a great coach for the Arena Football League, for the Arizona Wranglers or something like that. Great coach. And the reason I'm saying is that, and then getting back onto Dallas. Getting back to Dallas. Dallas we had became a laughingstock of the league at the time. We became a laughingstock of the league. We were becoming a laughingstock of the league. And doing so, we had a new owner. His name is Jerry Wayne Jones.
Oh.
After what I was saying, where Jerry Wayne Jones had decided to get rid of the great legendary Tom Landry. And by doing so, I felt that he was wrong with the way he got rid of him. Because Tom Landry been a great legendary coach, friend of the great Vince Lombardi, and helped build the Dallas Cowboys into a great franchise, a great winner, an exciting team with a great atmosphere, a great fan base, and having our name as America's team. And even though the team started having very bad losing seasons, and not getting very good picks in the draft, and Tom was getting old up in age and losing, which I thought it was unfair the way they got rid of him. He asked for a front office, my opinion is, that he asked for a front office job, but Jerry Wayne Jones would not give it to him. So he had set up a meeting at this golf course. I don't know what city in Texas it was at, but for them to meet at this golf course, him and some other business people, and to meet with Tom Landry. And the way he did that was wrong. He should have called Tom in with his wife and like met at a dinner meeting or at church or somewhere, and just sit down and explain We know that you're a great legendary coach and you built this great franchise into what it is today, which is my beloved great Dallas Cowboys, the team that I love and you love. I feel, I'm speaking like I'm Jerry Wayne Jones. I feel that because you are a great coach, yes, you've done all these great things for our team. I feel it's best for the team that we have you to step down, but the way he did it was wrong. You know it was wrong, I know it was wrong. And at that time, now my eyes are open to where he goes about things. Some things, I don't like the way he does things. And right now, as a fan, I'm upset about it. But I'm gonna get to that. And so, he went ahead and fired Tom Landry at the golf course and everything. And during that same week, all over the city of Dallas, the fans were up in roar. Someone was happy, someone was unhappy. The majority was unhappy the way he did that. But to turn a great team around, you have to build from the bottom up. You got to have a great foundation. First of all, to have a great foundation, you must put God first in your life. And Tom Landry, he was that type of person. I know he was a great Christian man, great motivator, creator of the 4-3 defense, creator of the famous flex defense, and a stoic, great Christian man. Used to speak in Billy Graham crusades. But as a Dallas Cowboy fan, it was time for a change. But I don't like the way it was done. But then, right before Tom had left the team, he had recruited the great Michael Irvin out of Miami Hurricanes. And out of the Miami Hurricanes, I believe that was his last great recruit. And last great recruit, as the last great recruit, he was a great wide receiver for that team. A great player. He had his off the field issues and everything and stuff. When they hired the great legendary Miami Hurricanes coach Jimmy Johnson out of Miami, after helping them win a national championship, they got some more players and everything and started building his team from the ground up. And he started getting his own players and getting rid of the other Tom Landry people and started getting the kind of players he wanted to build greatness. And even though this team had issues, had off the field issues, the team had no kind of structure, no kind of do what's right. And then by 1992, this team started winning again. They had a playoff game against the Chicago Bears, won that game, then they lost the next week. I forgot what game it was. And then next year, they went to the Super Bowl in California against Jim Kelly and the attack of the Buffalo Bills with Thurman Thomas at running back. Dallas had a great cast of characters, great defense, great offense, quarterback Troy Aikman out of Oklahoma, UCLA. And at that time, when he was at Oklahoma, I'm gonna get to that. His next coach that became the Dallas Cowboys coach after Jerry Wayne Jones fired him after winning 2 Super Bowls, his name was Barry Switzer out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma was a great team back in the 50s, back in the 70s, and I believe they were in the 80s. In 2000, they beat my Florida State Seminoles for the state national championship. We're not going to get into that, but that's another story. And so after winning that first Super Bowl against Buffalo, Dallas was back on top of the mountain. The score was 52-17, and in that famous stadium down in California. Then Dallas was the next year they won again against Buffalo in Atlanta, Georgia, won another Super Bowl. And then that's when they got rid of. It was a dispute between contract disputes and Jerry Wayne Jones and like how Jim was running things, and he wanted to get all the publicity, and he wanted to get everything that's done great for this team. He always wanted to get credit for it, and it all works together. talking about Bear Swiss and everything, and how they won a Super Bowl against Pittsburgh, and Arizona won that Super Bowl. And that was the last time Dallas had won a Super Bowl until now. They've gone almost 25 years without winning a Super Bowl. And I'm glad we made changes to get rid of the coach, Jason Garrett, which I don't think he was good enough to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. He made terrible bad decisions in times, didn't know how to make changes on defense or offense to adjust when another team that know how to beat the Cowboys. And wish no bad ill feelings on him, but I'm kind of glad he's gone. It is a new era, a new time, a new beginning. And there's a new beginning for me and you as America's team and America's team fans. I wish the blessings upon you, that you be healed, blessed, and be safe from this coronavirus. And God be with you. Amen.